Sup, welcome to my guide to older gens. A brief introduction, just so we're on the same page. I hear a lot of you want to or interested in learning older gens, but the problem I keep hearing in a lot of you is that you don't have the time, or a lot of people just seem to be put off, intimidated by lengthy guides. A mate of mine actually recently produced a whole series of Gen 2 episodes, and he did a brilliant job on it, and I will be linking his videos in the description. But again, the dilemma seems to be that these videos seem to be too long for people that want to get into the gen and just seem to be put off by, well, the feedback I seem to get from them is I'll send them the video and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do it when I got time, or this is, too long and I've never had time, or blah blah blah. So hopefully now with this quick guide there'll be no excuse. So my intentions here are just to sum up the essentials of the previous gens and just jot out the key points so that it'll be easy to learn and understand in a couple seconds. This way you can just go ahead and take notes and then keep it beside you when you practice those gens. And just to be clear, I will not be providing the full in-depth description of all the mechanics and everything there is. Those, if you wanna see those, then you have to kind of go watch the people that have actually put time into their videos and made the full length guides, like my friend for example. But yeah, so before I start, I should mention this: the guide will not be explaining tiers, Pokemon, each individual item, the moves individually. Basically, I may mention like an item or a move, but if I do, then it's most likely compulsory to that meta. Like, I'll be mentioning the key points that are essential, like I said, to that meta game, but those parts are kind of meant to be for you guys to go learn and count towards team building, like looking into each individual item and stuff. So yeah, anyway, without further ado, Generation 1, this will include Pokemon up to 151. In this gen, there are no items, no abilities, no natures, and no team preview. Stats are unlike Gen 6. It only includes HP, attack, defense, special, speed. Special is special attack and special defense together, all in one. Every stat should have 15 IVs, 252 EVs. Crits in this gen are based on a Pokemon's speed stat. For example, Tauros will crit 20% of the time, Snorlax will crit 5% of the time. On the subject of crits, if you're at +2 and you get a crit, that +2 is ignored. Exactly how in 6th gen when you're at -2 or -5, when you get the crit, it ignores it. And that is exclusive to this gen. The freeze mechanics in Gen 1 is that when you get frozen, you stay frozen for the whole match. And the only way to get out of a freeze is to either be hit by a fire move, or I think haze also gets you out, but I don't know because no one uses it. Sleep does not reset in Gen 1, and when a Pokemon wakes up, it has to miss a turn on the turn it wakes up. Rest still works normally. Every move in Gen 1 has a chance to miss. The only move that will not miss is the move Swift, but every move that says 100% accuracy actually has a 1 in 256 chance of missing. Pokemon that is 255 or 511 below its max HP, recovery moves will fail. There are no fairy types, obviously, in this gen. I'm not going to keep repeating that. Fairy types just a 6th gen thing. There are no steel types though. Gen 1 had not included steel types yet. On the subject of typing, ice is neutral on fire, poison is super against bug, and bug is super against poison. And psychic is immune to ghost in Gen 1 as well. In previous gens, you could always paralyze an electric type. And also you can spore any grass Pokemon as well. So you can put any grass Pokemon to sleep or stun spore them or whatever you're going to do to them. And another Gen 1 mechanic is that Pokemon with the same typing cannot secondary effect on each other. What I mean by that is a normal type using Body Slam on another normal type cannot paralyze. That's only exclusive to Gen 1. Physical and special moves are based off of typing. Moves such as Wrap, Fire Spin, Clamp and Bind prevent your opponent from attacking. That is only exclusive to Gen 1 and is rather broken. Counter only works on normal and fighting types. You can only bounce it back if you were hit by a normal or fighting type attack. Hyper Beam has no recharge in Gen 1 if you get the kill. Reflect will double your defense as long as you stay in. Amnesia gives you a +2 special in this gen and is quite worth taking advantage of. Sub is actually rather useless in Generation 1. I do not recommend using it. Substitute does not block things like sleep or stun sport, it goes straight through the sub. Psychic is a move worth abusing in Gen 1. Everyone abuses it because it has a high special defense, a special drop rate, sorry. And the move Explode gives you a free turn, because in this gen, if you're faster and you explode and there's no Pokemon on the pitch, they have to miss a go. Also, Explode halves your opponent's defense stat. Note also that in Gen 1 there was a lot less moves to choose from. There's not as many as there used to be. But yeah, that's it for Gen 1 really. That's everything that would probably come up. So I'm just gonna leave it there because again this is meant to be a quick guide. To sum up Gen 1, I'm just gonna say that you can always win. No matter who the opponent is, you always have a chance of winning. Alright, moving on, Gen 2. This is Pokemon up to 251. Items here are included. The only item I've ever seen worth using in Gen 2 is Leftovers. There are no abilities still, no natures, no team preview. The stats in this gen is exactly how it is today in Gen 6. Special defense is now included. All IVs are still 15. Hidden Power was introduced, but the IVs for Hidden Power work differently in this gen. Every Hidden Power has its fixed IVs. For example, if you're running Hidden Power Ice, the defense IV will always be 13. HP and the special defense IV can never be edited. A Pokemon's gender also relies on its IVs. So if the Pokemon has the IV attack stats of 0 to 7, the Pokemon is a female. All EVs have to be 252 for every stat, exactly the same in Gen 1. Special defense cannot be edited. Crits in this gen are no longer based on a Pokemon's speed stats. In this gen, crits only happen 6% of the time, or 6.25% of the time if you want me to be precise. Freeze now has a 20% chance to defrost, but you cannot be frozen in the sunlight now. The turn you defrost, you have to miss a go in this gen. Leftovers now has last priority, so in this gen, when you receive leftover recovery, it happens like right at the end after everything else has happened. Like this includes after death has happened. But saying that, the moves Leech Seed and Toxic will take effect on the turn of the attack. They have changed sleep in this game so that when you wake up you don't actually have to miss a go. You can now attack on the turn that you wake up. Rest talk is abused in this generation because pretty much when you sleep talk the move rest, it takes effect. This is only exclusive to Gen 2 and Gen 2 only. Explosion still works the same. If you explode, your opponent misses a go, and on top of that, it halves your opponent's defense stat on the turn that it was used. Hazards have now been introduced. You only get Spikes. Spikes is the only hazard in Gen 2. You can only set up a maximum of 1 layer, which will always do 12.5% of a Pokemon's max HP, if they are not a flying type. Rapid Spin, I should say, has also been introduced. Substitute has now improved. It can now block status, but the moves Giga Drain, or any move that steals HP, and the move Protect fail when behind the substitute. Belly Drum in Gen 2 is glitched because even if you're below 50% of your max HP, it will still work, but it won't work accordingly to how it should. It will work as a Swords Dance. Also, it's worth to note that when you do power up to like +6, your stat cannot pass 999. Good moves in Gen 2. Pursuit was introduced. Thunder is heavily used in Gen 2 and is abused the most in Gen 2 over Thunderbolt. Curse is heavily used and is abused. The Steel type is now introduced into Gen 2. It can resist Ghost and Dark types. Also, Magnemite and Magneton have now given an extra type in, so now they're both Steel types. You can still paralyze electric types in this gen, and you can still spore grass types. Physical and special moves will be based off typing still. All priority moves are +1, so that means the move Extreme Speed is only a +1 in this gen. Encore only lasts 2 to 6 turns. And I think that will be all for Gen 2, because that's the things I think you need to know. Gen 2 is a very slow paced game, so you do need time and patience when you're playing it. You cannot rush your plays. Let's move on to Gen 3. This will include Pokemon up to 386. The moves that are worth using are Leftovers and Choice Band. There is only Choice Band, no other choice items. I've seen some berries. You'll see things like Lumberry, probably Salak Berry and such. No team preview. This gen, abilities and natures were introduced. Stats now included, so it's all independent strategies. IVs are all now 31, depending if you're running hidden power or not. EVs are a total of 510, but as usual, you only need 508. Crits still work in 5 stages. Freeze is still the same, like in Gen 6, but unlike Gen 2, you now attack on the turn that you defrost. Also, in this gen, Flash Fire is disabled when a Pokemon is frozen. Leftovers, Toxic, and Sandstorm all have last priority. Like I mentioned before, after you've killed your opponent's Pokemon, they put a Pokemon in, and then that Pokemon takes leftovers. Sleep still does not reset. Hazards have now gone up to 3 layers of spikes. 1 layer is 12%, 2 layers is 16%, 3 layers is 25% on non-flying enemies, and of course non-levitate enemies. You can still paralyze electric types, you can still spore grass types in this gen. Steel types still resist ghost and dark types. Ghost types can be trapped by abilities in this gen. Sandstream, Drought, and Drizzle were all introduced in this gen, and they last the whole battle. Sturdy works differently in this gen. It will not protect you from moves that would otherwise kill you. All priority moves are still +1, like Extreme Speed. Encore lasts 2 to 6 turns. Taunt lasts exactly 2 turns, including the turn it was used on. Physical and special attacks are based off typing still. Hidden power is abused highly in Gen 3. But otherwise, there's not much else to say really. There's no huge difference compared to this in Gen 6. When I play Gen 3, I like to take care of bulky Pokemon first, and then I pick my moment and my opening, and then I set up and pretty much sweep the rest of the Pokemon, and I abuse full hazards as well. But that's it on the subject of Gen 3. Moving on to Gen 4. Pokemon up to 493. There's no team preview still. There are now even more items, so now you have full choiced items, all 3 of them. You will see a lot of items like Focus Sash, Life Orb. Abilities and natures are still standard. There's now extra abilities on some Pokemon. Stats all still standard. IVs all 31. EVs you spread out in a total of 508. Crits still work the same. Each crit has a 6.25% chance. Leftovers, Toxic, and Sand and such have now all changed their priority. New hazards were introduced. Stealth Rock was introduced. Stealth Rock will do additional 12% on neutral enemies. Toxic Spikes was also introduced. You can set up 1 layer or 2 layers. Encore still does 2 to 6 turns. Taunt now does 2 to 4 turns. Priority moves are still +1, like Extreme Speed. U-Turn was now introduced. Snow Warning was now introduced, so it's the final weather ability that lasts the whole battle. Sturdy does not protect against moves that would otherwise kill you. Volt Absorb has now been fixed in this gen, so it can now absorb moves like Thunder Wave, which it couldn't in Gen 3. Electric types can still be paralyzed though, and Spore can still put to sleep grass types. The Steel type can still resist Ghost and Dark. Rock types now get a special defense boost in the sand. Ghost types can't be trapped by abilities. Physical and special category now apply for all moves, so electric can be physical and special. Form changes were introduced in Gen 4, so Giratina, Shaming, Rotom, Arceus all got form changes. Shaming reverts to its normal form when it's frozen. Rotom's typings are always Ghost and Electric in Gen 4 for all these forms. Arceus gets every typing except Fairy type. So yeah, that's it on Gen 4. Pokemon, I would say, just even more frailer now due to stronger items, and a good chance of winning in Gen 4 is to always be original and unpredictable. Alright, final gen, Gen 5, Pokemon up to 649. Now, Team Preview was introduced here, so this gen does have Team Preview. More items, Eviolite, Air Balloon, Gems, a lot of stranger items that I see here and there that I don't personally use, but it's worth checking them out. Abilities, natures, all standard, hidden power. Hidden abilities were now introduced in this generation. Standard stats, 31 IVs, max spread of 508 EVs. The crits still work, how it did from Gen 2 to 5. Freeze no longer stops Flash Fire in this generation. Leftovers, Toxic, and Sand still have the standard priority like how it is now. Sleep turns now reset in this generation. Encore now lasts exactly 3 turns, and Taunt now lasts exactly 3 turns. Speed priority can now be +2, so Extreme Speed is now +2 in Gen 5. Volt Switch has now been introduced. Sturdy works the exact same in Gen 6 and now protects you from moves that would otherwise kill you. Electric types can still be paralyzed though, and grass types can still be spored. Steel types still resist Ghost and Dark. Ghost types cannot be trapped by abilities. Physical and special moves are still standard. Rotom's typings have now changed. They're pretty much how they are in Gen 6. Each typing now has a different type. Last thing I'm going to mention, the Pokemon Scolipede has the hidden ability Quick Feet in this gen, and in Gen 6 it doesn't, it has Speed Boost. I don't think that's too much of a huge difference, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. So yeah, there's not much to mention in the later games. The later games are very similar to Gen 6, so that's why I don't have much to tell you on it, but this gen is it's very similar to 4th and 6. Of course, Weather lost the whole match in Gen 5, unlike Gen 6, so in Gen 5, Weather is really abused, and the metagame itself seems rather broken in some ways, so you need to come prepared if you want to do well. Otherwise, that will be the wrap up of my guide. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, and I hope you've learned something here. So, take care all, see you around.